You texted them 3 days ago. No reply. You called straight to voicemail. And this isn't some stranger. This is your friend, your sibling, maybe even your partner. Someone who just a few weeks ago was perfectly present, perfectly normal. And now, gone. Like a Wi-Fi signal in a basement. Just dropped. And here's what makes it so confusing. They didn't disappear because things were good. They disappeared right when things got hard. Their job fell apart. A relationship ended. Something heavy landed on their chest. And instead of reaching out, instead of letting anyone in, they just vanished. So what do you do with that? You start telling yourself stories. Maybe it's me. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe they don't trust me. And maybe, if you're being honest, a small, uncharitable part of you thinks, that's just selfish. That's just running away. But here's what psychology has to say about that, and I think it's going to change how you see this entirely. Disappearing isn't always abandonment. Sometimes it's the only form of survival a person knows. Let's go back to the beginning. Not your beginning, theirs. Because almost every adult who ghosts the world during hard times learned to do that somewhere. Psychologists call it withdrawal-based coping, and it doesn't just fall from the sky. It's usually constructed brick by brick in childhood. If you grew up in a home where showing pain made things worse, where crying got you dismissed, where asking for help was seen as weakness, where needing something was inconvenient, your nervous system learned something very specific. Vulnerability is dangerous. Don't show the wound. Hide until it heals. John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, spent decades studying how our earliest relationships shape the way we handle stress as adults. What he found was that children who grow up with unpredictable or emotionally unavailable caregivers don't learn to soothe themselves through connection. They learn to soothe themselves through disconnection. Solitude becomes the safe house. And when adulthood arrives with all its chaos and complexity, that old blueprint activates. Stress equals isolate. Pain equals disappear. It's not a choice exactly. It's more like a reflex, like pulling your hand back from a hot stove. You don't think about it, you just move. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because neuroscience has a lot to add to this conversation. When people are under extreme psychological stress, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, social planning, and what we might call being a good friend, starts to go offline. What takes over instead is the limbic system, the ancient reptilian part of your brain that only knows 3 moves: fight, flee, or freeze. And for people who've been wired since childhood to associate social interaction with emotional risk, the limbic system votes very clearly. It votes flee every time. So the person who's ghosting you right now, their brain, quite literally, may not be fully capable of reaching out. Not because they don't care, but because caring and reaching out in their nervous system are 2 different things that got disconnected somewhere along the way. There's also something called the social pain overlap theory, a concept backed by research from Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA, which found that social rejection and physical pain activate the same regions of the brain. What that means in plain English is this. For people who've been hurt by others during vulnerable moments, the idea of being seen while struggling genuinely hurts, not metaphorically, neurologically. Reaching out when you're at your lowest feels like pressing on a bruise that never fully healed. And yet, we still call them flaky. We still take it personally. We still say, they could have just texted. Let me offer you a different image. Imagine an animal that's been injured. What does it do? It doesn't trot back to the herd and announce the wound. It finds a dark, quiet corner and waits. It minimizes movement. It protects the soft places. That's not weakness. That's a very old, very intelligent survival strategy. And humans, for all our sophistication, are still running a lot of that same ancient software. Now, and this matters, none of this means the behavior is harmless, because it isn't. When someone disappears repeatedly under stress, they deprive themselves of exactly what the research shows would actually help: social connection. A 2015 meta-analysis by Julianne Holt-Lundstad, which tracked over 300,000 people, found that strong social relationships increase the likelihood of survival by 50%. Isolation, by contrast, is as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The coping mechanism that feels like protection ends up making everything worse. That's the cruel irony of it. The wall built to keep pain out ends up locking the pain in. And on the other side of that wall, the people who love them, sitting with unanswered messages and a quiet, gnawing hurt of their own. So what do you do if you're the one who disappears? First, and this is important, you stop calling yourself broken. You're not broken, you're adapted. There's a difference. Adapted means the strategy worked once, probably for a very good reason. It also means it can be updated. Not overnight, not through sheer willpower, but through slowly, carefully building what psychologists call earned security, the experience of being seen at your worst and not being abandoned. You find one person, maybe a therapist, maybe one very patient friend, and you practice the terrifying act of saying, "I'm not okay." And you notice what happens. You notice that the roof doesn't cave in, that they don't leave, that vulnerability, despite everything your nervous system has been screaming, is sometimes safe.
And if you're on the other side, if you're the one watching someone disappear and wondering what you did wrong, here's your reframe. It's almost certainly not about you, not even a little. What you're watching is a person executing a survival strategy so deeply encoded they probably don't even know they're doing it. The most powerful thing you can do is not chase frantically and not disappear yourself in retaliation, but simply leave a light on, a message that says, "I'm here when you're ready, no pressure." It costs you almost nothing. To them, it might mean everything, because somewhere in the quiet of their dark corner, part of them is wondering whether anyone will still be there when they come back out. They usually come back out. And when they do, the conversation you have, if you can have it with curiosity instead of accusation, might be one of the most honest ones you've ever shared. Because people who've survived their own disappearing acts often have a profound self-awareness about it once the storm passes. They know they went under. They're often deeply grateful to the people who didn't make them feel guilty for it. So here's the thought I want to leave you with. In a world that rewards constant performance and relentless visibility, choosing to withdraw is often treated as failure, as flakiness, as not caring enough. But sometimes the person who goes quiet is the person most desperately in need of gentleness, both from the people around them and from themselves. The psychology of disappearing isn't a character flaw, it's a story. And like every story, it makes a lot more sense when you know how it started. If this resonated with you, whether you recognized yourself in the one who disappears or the one waiting on the other side, drop a comment below. I'd genuinely love to know which one you are, or if you've been both. Because most of us, if we're honest, have played both roles at different points in our lives. And that might be the most human thing about all of this.